everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I have a layout that I made using the My Creative Scrapbook April limited edition kits. For this layout I'm using a circular photo of my older daughter, and I cut it out using my Creative Memories circle cutter. You can see it over to the left. That's an old tool, but I still use it all the time. I use the same tool to cut out a mat for that picture out of some patterned papers that were in the kit. And this month the kit mainly had the Prima Collection watercolor floral, and it also had a few sheets of 49 and Market, but for today I'm just going to be using the watercolor floral Prima Collection. The flowers that I'm putting down now I had made for another layout, and I will put a link in the description box. If you would like to see how I made them, I use a stamp that was in the kit and some distress oxides, and then I fussy cut the flowers out and I place a pearl in the center. I was thinking for this layout that I would make the flowers go around the photo in a question mark shape. So you can see that it's a backwards question mark though, and I'm just using those paper flowers as a base, and I'm attaching those down. And then pretty soon I'm going to be layering some of the Prima flowers on top. My plan is to attach the photo and all the flowers down to this sheet of paper. This is a lightweight piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to be cutting out the photo and the entire cluster, and then in that way I will have one unit that I can move around on a piece of pattern paper and figure out where I want the mixed media and everything else to go. It's just a little easier for me when I do it this way. I want there to be a lot of flowers. I want this to be very full, so I'm using, like I said, the Prima flowers that are dimensional. I'm using those flowers that I made, and I'm also using some of the die cut flowers. Here I am just cutting off some of the white edge, and I'm using some Distress Oxide to ink the edges. And then I also want to use some tiny flowers. I like it when I'm using a large cluster to have some very small flowers around the edges, and I feel like that helps the unit or the cluster not look so solid. It helps it to kind of transition into the background. So I like to look for those little elements like that and include them, like I said, just around the edges of the larger cluster. This was a leftover piece of chipboard that was included in the kit. I had used all the other chipboard on another layout, and I had this piece left over, and I really liked it. So I thought I would either use it under the photo or right on top of the photo. I returned to the chipboard in a little bit. Right now I'm going to start gluing down the flowers to the piece of paper in the background. And I do a lot of rearranging, both before I glue the flowers down and as I'm gluing them down. I always feel like I want to try different things and see how different things look. So I'm forever rearranging things as I'm working on a layout. Mainly I'm thinking about the distribution of the colors. Do I have enough of each color or a right balance of colors? And I also think about the different sizes. I don't want to put too many large things in one place or too many small things in one place. I want to try to spread out the different sizes. And I also am looking at the form that they create. So I'm looking at the outline and the way that the elements flow. So that causes me to keep going back and keep trying new things. Here I'm using some Elmer's gel glue to glue down the flowers. I really like that glue. It dries crystal clear. And it doesn't work quite as well as heavy duty gel medium for holding things in place, especially things that are a little bulkier and heavier, but it works pretty well. And the flowers here are for the most part pretty light, so this works out just fine. I'm looking at my table as I'm voicing this over, and I'm noticing that I didn't put the lid back on my Distress Oxide, and that's really bothering me right now. Sometimes when I'm doing my voiceovers, I notice either a mess. Well, I always notice a mess because as I'm scrapbooking, I tend to just have a big explosion right near where I'm working, and sometimes I have to stop and clean everything up because I slowly lose places to put things. And then after each page I will do a thorough cleaning of my table, but as I'm filming, it's generally a mess. And you can see that's a mini mess for me right there. That's not even that bad. I would love to be able to reach in there and put that lid back on the Distress Oxide. So now I'm going back to that chipboard and I'm trimming it a little bit. I've decided that I'm going to put it on the top of the layout. But right now I'm going to just cut out that large cluster, and I just take my scissors and I just kind of angle them in and cut just enough away so that you can't see it from the front. I haven't put glue up to the edges, so it's really not too bad. And I cut out some of that, but you get the idea. I just cut away the white paper, and that enables me to move my big cluster around on this sheet of paper. This is one of the Prima pieces of paper that was included in the kit. I don't know if you can tell from the video, but it is a very beautiful paper. It's blue and white, and it has some script on the background, so I'm just covering it in some clear gesso. Then I'll use white gesso, and then the next thing I'm going to do is add some modeling paste to the background, and I'm going to be using the Prima stencil that was included in the kit. It's super pretty. It is lines of swirls and flourishes, and so I made a pencil line to show myself where the outline of the large cluster would be, and now I'm using some white gesso just to fade out around where that large cluster is going to be. And I like the effect that that gives. It just kind of draws your eye to the large cluster. And I'm just using a Missy Whitten technique of just spreading it with my finger. Now I'm taking some modeling paste and some white acrylic paint. I mix those together. And that is so the modeling paste will be pure white. It won't look gray. The modeling paste is a little bit gray naturally, so I like to add some white paint. I used to add stencil paint when I had some. I have run out of it, so now I'm just using regular old white acrylic paint, but I feel like that works fine. I used the stencil paint because it's a little thicker, and I don't want the modeling paste to be too soft and go behind the stencil, but this worked out just fine. So I'm just adding some lines of the modeling paste right behind where the cluster of flowers will be, and I'm drying the modeling paste, each line of it, before I go on to the new one. I don't want to be squishing what I already did with the stencil. I've done that many, many times. So I'm doing it line by line, and here I'm just measuring. I don't expect it to be perfect, but I don't also want it to be noticeably poorly spaced, so I'm just trying to be careful that it's definitely not perfect. And it might have been a little easier to make a non-symmetrical design so that I wouldn't have had to worry about that. And you can see that in some cases I'm using that little plastic spatula, which I get those from the dollar store, or I'm using my finger to just kind of scrape away or smear away the modeling paste when I don't like the way that it came out. As you can see, I put quite a few lines of the modeling paste. So now I'm just finishing that up. And I do go clean my stencil right away. I don't want the modeling paste to dry on it. Even though I've never had a situation where a stencil got ruined as far as having stuff caked on it, I've always been able to get it off, but sometimes the stencil can get a little bent in trying to get dried paint off of it, so I try to wash it right away. Now I'm using daubers and some Distress Oxides, and I'm just gently rubbing a little bit of Distress Oxide. I'm trying to just get the raised part of the modeling paste. It's not going to just go on the raised part because the dauber is a large enough area that it's getting around the sides a little bit as well, but I just wanted to put a little bit of color on the background. I want it to be very, very subtle. I'm not trying to create a large area of color. I just wanted a hint of each of those colors. So I started off with a little bit of faded lilac, which is that purpley color, the light purple color that I put on in the beginning. Then I put on some Blueprint Sketch, that's the darker blue color. I also used some Tattered Rose and Worn Lipstick, those are the two pinkish colors. And then I used some cracked pistachio as well. And you could see there, it didn't make a huge difference. I just wanted to add a little bit. Now I'm using some watered down white acrylic paint to make some splatters, and I am ready to start the rest of the layout. I don't know if you saw that, my husband's hand was just in the video and he was pointing to something on my layout. He's very kind to me and always says such nice things about my layouts. My older daughter is very kind too, but I've mentioned this before. She's kind of my scrapbooking consultant. If there's something that I can't figure out, or I'm not sure if something looks good or not good, she's not only good at being honest, but she's also great at making suggestions as to how I could change something or add a color or add an element or take something away. So I have a lot of support with these layouts. The whole family pitches in at times. So now I'm making a little cluster in the lower left-hand side. I believe that everything in that cluster right now is from the die cut pack, or one of the die cut packs, because there was more than one in this particular month's kit. And so I'm just layering them up, and I'm including one of the Prima flowers on the top. There's a little sentiment there that says "Be Yourself," and that is going to be the title of this layout. I'm popping up the whole thing on some foam. That's just some fun foam from the kids section of the craft store. I usually get mine in Michael's. And then I add some ATG adhesive to the foam and I attach that right down to the bottom. I'm using a dauber and some distress oxide to ink the edges of that butterfly's wings, and I'm also going to pop up that butterfly on some foam, and I'm going to use ATG adhesive for him too, or her too. And I just attach that butterfly a little bit off to the side of that blue flower. I haven't quite gotten the bottom of that question mark, as I was calling it. I haven't quite gotten that right. So I do play around a little bit with some tiny flowers and some leaves in a little bit. And here I'm adding some of the small flowers around the outside of that big cluster. And I'm just trying to make the bottom of the flowers kind of look like they're cascading down. So I added some leaves down the bottom there, and like I said, some of those tiny flowers, which helps it kind of look like it's going downward. I'm adding some little leaves and butterflies around the edges. And a lot of those tiny butterflies were fussy cut out from the Prima papers. I really love that about Prima papers. There's always so many little images to fussy cut out. And throughout the paper packs and the die cuts, the images appear in different sizes. And I really like that. So I have quite a few butterflies, small butterflies mainly, that are spread around this layout. I'm also using some gold leaves. Those were fussy cut out from one of the pattern papers. And I like the little touch of gold. I think that looks nice. And I haven't embossed it yet. The chipboard at the top is going to be embossed, and I'm going to emboss it the same way I embossed it on some other layouts I made. So I used white embossing powder, and then I also used some lavender embossing powder. And in another video that I created using the same paper collection, I included the embossing. Sometimes I include it, sometimes I don't. But in case you're interested in seeing it, I will put the link in the description box. I used some gesso to cover up some inking that I didn't like right there. I do that in a moment. So I'm just using an old paintbrush. There's my little dog Rory. I don't know if you saw her. She was on the bottom right. She just came sniffing around, see if I had any food to offer her. And once that dries, I'm going to attach that right to the top. Here I am adding some glue to the back. I put one pearl on it, but I'm going to go ahead and put some more pearls on top in a few moments. But first, I'm going to be attaching down those little blue flowers. I feel like I have put those on the layout quite a few times, but now I'm finally attaching them down. I didn't have any of that bluish green color in the small cluster on the bottom, so I decided that I would add that by adding a flower, which I thought that flower looked just right in that little spot right underneath the title. And now I'm adding some more pearls to the piece of chipboard. And some of those pearls are really tiny, and I'm using my scissors to help me position them. And I like the way that just makes the chipboard just look, I don't know, a little bit more special. So I like to add those little tiny pearls. And I also like to put glue underneath them because a lot of times the adhesive does not stick long term. So when I can, I put some underneath as I'm making the layout. Sometimes I'll just take the glue and I'll just put a little bit of it underneath or to the sides of those pearls, even after I've already stuck them down. I also put that little line of pearls on the bottom, right underneath where it says Be Yourself. And now I'm adding some die cuts. This is a die from my stash. I am so sorry that I can't tell you where I got it from. I've had it in my stash for quite a while, and I like this one. I just started using it. It has a little flower on it, and it has a little bit of a swirl or a flourish as well. So I thought this would be a good choice for this particular layout. In some cases, I'm adding the whole die cut, and in others, I'm just cutting little pieces off and adding little bits. And with the die cuts, I want to make sure that I have them not evenly distributed, but that there are some all over the cluster. So I'm just spreading them out. And I'm still fussing with that bottom part there. I didn't have it just the way I wanted it. So I added one of the die cuts to the bottom there. Now I'm taking a little sponge, I'm dipping it in some heavy gesso, and I'm just dabbing it around the layout. I'm probably putting the most gesso on the flowers, but I'm not pressing hard. I just want to touch the sponge to various areas on the layout, and that just kind of brings everything together. It gives the layout cohesion, and it also brings some white into the layout and just helps everything look brighter, and I just love the way that that looks. And here's the other thing that I love, which is some white splatters. And I always mention how I just use some watered down white acrylic paint, and I just keep it handy because I make a lot of splatters on my layouts. So it's always in this little bottle and ready to go. Well, I was thinking about using that banner that I just placed on the top right hand corner in a little cluster up there. So I put that there, and I was just kind of thinking about whether I liked it or not. And in the meantime, I'm taking some Bow Bunny glitter paste, and I am using a brush, and I'm putting it on the die cuts, and I'm also putting it on the butterflies. And it would have been much more efficient to have put this on before I put the die cuts on the layout, but I never think to do that. So it's kind of one of the finishing touches. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it gets on something else, it doesn't matter, or if it doesn't completely cover, that's okay too. It just adds a little bit of shimmer. I don't want to put it on the entire layout because then I feel that it would be a little bit overkill. So I just pick some elements and I add that glitter paste. And the color of that is sugar. It's just a sparkly, clear glitter paste. So I decided against that banner, and I just put some butterflies and flowers in that upper right-hand corner. And I add gold leaves to both of the small clusters so that there'll be gold in each of the clusters on the layout. And here are the close-ups. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope if you like this video, you'll give it a thumbs up. As always, I will have the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website in the description box, and you can check out all of the beautiful kits they have this month and every month. I hope that everybody has a wonderful day, and I hope to see everybody again soon. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.